Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video in Wild Rift. So today we're back with our Ezreal updated complete guide. And of course, as usual, don't forget to refer to our Ezreal basic guide that we released earlier today, of course, for his skills, combos, leveling order, as well as some tips and tricks. So first things first, as we jump into the loadout. Basically, Ezreal's build is exactly the same as before patch 12.2. I still believe that this is the best build on Ezreal. Now, tomorrow we're going to actually take a look at the Essence Reaver build, which is going to be a really interesting one. But after testing both, I still think that this is probably the stronger build. Essence Reaver has a stronger spike early, which we'll talk more about tomorrow as I mentioned. But for this particular video, we're going to be talking about his sort of default build and what I deem to be his best build. Now, basically the only core parts of the build is basically his first two items. Your last three items, the build order can change from match to match, and sometimes people even swap one of them out for Guardian Angel. So first up, you go for Manamune. Manamune, of course, gives you the mana, of course, gives you ability haste and allows you to, of course, deal extra damage on your basic attacks and your abilities. Now, honestly, the Manamune buff to abilities hasn't actually helped Ezreal that much because his Q always proc Manamune anyway, so maybe it does help on his W, E, and ulti, and also, of course, Ezreal got buffed to have increased Q damage and lower ulti cooldown, so that, of course, helps him as well. But the Manamune change itself, I don't think it's actually helped Ezreal all that much compared to a lot of other champions. But anyways, it's still an amazing item on Ezreal. It's only gotten better in this patch, just as I said, not as much as other champions, but it's still great. So then you of course go for Triforce. Now Triforce of course gives you basically all the good stats, of course, health, AD, attack speed, ability haste, movement speed, rage passive or even more movement speed, and most importantly here, the Spellblade passive, which basically allows you to deal extra damage every time you cast a spell. Now your Q is going to proc this because your Q procs on hit effects, and of course, for example, when you W auto is going to proc Spellblade as well. And something to note here is most of the time I like building Sheen early. So here you can see Sheen. Basically what Sheen does is it gives like half of the effect of Triforce. Here it gives physical damage equal to 100% base AD, whereas Triforce is 200% base AD. So it's sort of like half the effect of Triforce, but it's only 900 gold, and Triforce is 3,500 plus gold. So what I like to do here is I like to start off with a longsword first item. Then I go for Tear, and instead of completing Manamune first, I like to actually go for the Sheen. And then I complete Manamune, and then I complete Triforce. So for the boots, I've actually kind of changed my mind, and I actually think that Lucidity boots is probably the best way to go. And the reason is, defensive boots, generally Ezreal doesn't get attacked all that much because he's supposed to be far away and poking anyways. This boots is completely useless because it's the same passive as Triforce and it doesn't stack. Gluttonous Greaves is the only other boots I think could be possibly useful on Ezreal, but aside from that, I normally go for Lucidity boots. And you do get a lot of ability haste. You get 20 ability haste from here, 25 from here, 15 from here, and another 15 from here, and another 15 from here. But you know, on Ezreal, his main damage is from his Q. So if you can get your Q onto like a 1 second or like below 1 second cooldown even, it's going to increase your damage output by a lot. So I still think it makes sense. Now for the last three items, as I mentioned just now, you can kind of choose which order you go for the items in. Generally, your third item is a choice between Seralda's Grudge and Riftmaker. So with Seralda's Grudge, you of course get the armor penetration, AD ability haste, and also the IC passive, which on Ezreal, especially spamming his Q, is really useful for kiting enemies out or even chasing them down. Whereas Riftmaker, you get health, AP, Ezreal does scale off of AP, but less so than AD, ability haste, and Omnivamp, and finally you have the Void Corruption, which of course allows you to do true damage after 3 seconds of being in combat. So some people actually like going for Riftmaker as your third item because firstly you get the lifesteal earlier, and secondly you get more damage than Seralda's Grudge. But for me personally, I think most of the time I go Seralda's Grudge because I value the armor penetration and the kiting with the slows kind of more most of the time. So I realize I actually go for Seralda's most of the time as a third item. And then finally we have Blade of the Rune King, which again gives you more physical vam, attack speed, attack damage, which aren't very important. The important part is of course the three passives, the lifesteal as well as the current health damage on hit, as well as of course the drain passive. As I mentioned, you can actually swap out for GA one of the last three items. Now, I'm going to briefly mention it, but there are builds that involve going Iceborne Gauntlet. I don't like it because I think it does too little damage in my opinion, so I don't really think it's worth it. So now for the runes, I like actually going for Conqueror, of course, because you know you get the Vamp as well as the extra AD. Like I actually like going for Brutal, and the reason why is because Brutal actually procs on your Q, because your Q counts as a basic attack and procs on hit effects. So this is gonna proc on your Q, and it's gonna increase your Q damage. And I don't think lifesteal is needed because you already have 2 lifesteal items here, so I don't need Hunter Vampirism. Now here, of course, we go for Bone Plating. Generally, you always go for Bone Plating. You rarely go for any other rune because you generally shouldn't be getting caught anyways, because you're far away. And for your last rune, it's sort of like really a toss-up. I think Transcendence could be a little bit overkill because you already have so much ability haste. So maybe you could go for Mana Flow Ban. Of course, this will convert into damage when you complete your Mana Mune, or you could go for Nimbus Cloak for additional movement speed when you cast your spells. So for the spells itself, you always want to go for Exhaust and Flash. Ghost on Ezreal is useless because Ezreal already has a dash on his E, so she doesn't really need a Ghost. So Exhaust and Flash is pretty much the way to go. If anyone gets on top of you, then you just exhaust them and just run kite away with your E and your Qs. And that's pretty much it for the loadout explanation. Now we can jump into talking about our gameplay. Okay, so now we're jumping straight on into our gameplay. And now, as usual, of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And any questions, queries, or remarks, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will, of course, be sure to address them. Okay, so Ezreal. Now, Ezreal, first thing I'm going to briefly mention is working with supports. Now, generally, Ezreal works with any kind of supports. You're okay with engagers, you're okay with enchanters, you're basically okay with anything, more or less. The only thing that kind of sucks when you play Ezreal is if you play with an enchanter that's meant to boost a hyper carry. So for example, if you're playing with like a Lulu, it kind of sucks because Ezreal doesn't really want a Lulu because he's not really a hyper carry. If you're playing with a Janna who wants to protect their carry, it's kind of bad if you're Ezreal as well because Ezreal doesn't need protection. So basically, you're okay with basically any support as long as it's not like those kind, like that their main trait is focused on buffing you or protecting you, because Ezreal doesn't want to be protected. He doesn't want to really be buffed. He just wants to stay, like, you know, behind everyone and just keep poking down and keep launching Qs. He doesn't really need a Lulu. He doesn't really need a Janna. But of course, if you, like, for example, have a Tristana mid or a Tristana jungle, the Lulu or the Janna that is your support could support the Tristana like later on in the game instead of you. So that could still work if your team comp is like that. But if Ezreal's like the only ADC, you don't really want those kind of supports if you can help it. Anyways, Ezreal's laning phase is relatively straightforward. It's a little bit like Varus' laning phase, which is basically you just get CS and poke, get CS and poke. You can see here I'm landing poke into the Seraphine who's walking into the bush. Now, we can't see Seraphine in the bush, but we can take an educated guess around which area she is in the bush based on her walking speed. So you can see we basically landed 2 blind Qs onto the Seraphine there, and she probably thinks that we have a ward in there, unless she has a control ward in there, which basically tells her that we don't. But either way, she just walks into the bush twice. She gets hit by 2 Qs and she's no longer walking to the bush. Yeah. So here you can see we're just CSing. We're landing poke onto the Ashe and the Seraphine at the same time. Now we're also taking a decent amount of poke because of course we're against Ashe and Seraphine, because Ashe a lot of poke, Seraphine a lot of poke as well. So it's sort of like a battle of 2 poke lanes. Now of course, I do have a Leona who is of course hard engaged, and if the opportunity arises, of course Leona can go in and we can get an all-in, but that's extremely difficult, at least as of now. You know, it's the best way is if I poke them out a little bit and they're not full health, and maybe we can find an opportunity when they overstep or something like that, and of course get a kill. Now you can see on the minimap there's huge shenanigans. Kayn gone for an invade on Twitch's red buff for some reason and gets caught doing it and causes our mid lane Teemo to rotate and die as well. And it's just overall just a disaster for what happened. So here I'm control warding the river bush, and I'm of course clearing out their ward. Now here the bot lane is missing. Seraphine is gone. As you can see, has just shown up. I'm clearing our ward, of course. But now you can see Seraphine and Ashe are back into the lane. Here I'm just trying to land some poke over the wall. Not a lot that Leona can do here except just take poke. Unfortunately, unless she goes in over the wall, which is not really a good idea at this time. So here we have the shove, and here we're just trying to poke them on the tower. Unfortunately, the next minion wave comes in, but the game plan is still the same. We still want to CS and just poke, CS and just poke. Here, Seraphine actually hits a charm on me, but you can see there that I buffer my E, which is something I covered, or I tried to cover Actually, I did cover it. I just mentioned it in briefly in my basic guide. But here is a live example of it. If you get hit by CC but you cast your E before, you will still get CC'd, but your E will actually go through. Same thing with Tristana W. You will still get CC'd, but your W will still go through. So you can see there that because of the fact that I managed to E to a different position, and Ashe saw me get hit by the charm, she actually launches her arrow in my old position and ends up whiffing the arrow. So here, what we basically got is we got Seraphine and Ashe both ultis down and we didn't die, we didn't really even get caught, honestly. So we're in a terrific state here. We've expended both of their ultimates, and we didn't use our ultimate ourselves, but our ultimate is basically back up already, and it's really not a big deal. Of course, now Ashe's ultimate is also coming back up. Here I'm ulting to clear the wave as well as get a little bit of poke onto the Ashe as well as the Seraphine. And Dragon is going to come up. You can see Twitch in the area already. Kayn is taking the red buff, he's also in the area, so it looks like there's going to be a fight over the dragon really soon. Now you can see from my itemization, as I mentioned in the loadout section of the video, we have Longsword into Tear into Sheen. Now here we finally have an opportunity to get an all-in on the Ashe with the help of the Kayn. And of course we have to be wary that Twitch could still be hanging around the area. There he is actually. So you know, with a Twitch in the game, you always want to be aware of where he is on the map. If you don't know where he is, you just want to assume that he is somewhere near your lane, because invisible Twitch can obviously change a good fight to a bad fight. Especially comes in invisible, comes in with the ulti, and you know, he just destroys you and your team. Definitely not what we want to see. So Kayn here has gotten blue form off of the kill onto the Ashe, which is pretty amazing. And here now we're gonna go on to getting this dragon. Now I think that the enemy team has gone for Rift Herald. For some reason the rest of the enemy team rotates over here, as you guys can see, which is pretty bad because the rest of their team is picking up Rift Herald. Here we pick up more kills. Leona gets the Ashe again, and I'm able to pick up the kill onto the Seraphine. I land a blind Q onto the Lux. Once again, one of the kind of like skills that you kind of, I wouldn't say you need to have, but it's really useful to have on Ezreal, is estimating how fast people walk. So when you can estimate how fast people walk, you can kind of like travel, kind of like not travel, but predict where they're gonna be, and then just launch your Q in that general direction. And you can hit a lot of blind Qs, which is going to like, it's just gonna either trick the enemy into thinking you have a ward there, or you know, scare the enemy into thinking you're really good at Ezreal and like can just land skill shots even though like they're so far away or they're out of vision, something like that. So it's always a useful thing to, you know, always a useful skill to have. Now here once again I'm going for that like wave clear ult. You can see here that I'm like getting the ult onto the wave as well as getting the poke onto them. Of course removing that bone plating so that when we reach the lane we can go straight into a fight if we need to, because they don't have the bone plating anymore, and we're just thinning out the wave as well. Now of course one of the issues with that is Ezreal has nerfed damage onto minions when it comes to his ulti, so it will never actually clear the wave. It will only thin the wave, which is kind of annoying, but you know, it is what it is. And here Kayn is trying to go in for a lane gank. Now I don't think they actually know he's there, and now they do, but because Leona was in the bush as well. So here it kind of becomes a little bit messy with the Ashe ulti coming down, but here in the end we're able to clean up both kills with Leona tanking the tower. And here Twitch is trying to come in for more, but he's jumping into a 1v3, so he just goes down just like that. Here Lux is going to be the next challenger, but now that we are low, Leona's low as well, and Kayn is like half HP, we're actually just going to go ahead and just back. So here, since the fruit has been popped, I'm actually going to pick up the fruit and I'm going to push out the next wave, because I think Lux probably rotated back to mid or recall, so I don't think she's here to actually defend the tower. So I think I can get this wave for free, let the minions push into the tower, and Ashe and Seraphine of course will be walking back to lane to of course collect the wave, as I mentioned. There they are, but you know, in the meanwhile we managed to pick up a full wave and we're gonna back. Now here we can see that there's a fight happening, so I'm launching my ulti to try to help out in the fight. Unfortunately I kind of launch it at the wrong area. Now with the cross map ultis on like champions like Ezreal, Jinx and Draven, it really is sort of like a guess of where you think the fight is gonna go. So wherever the fight starts, if you're launching it from like the other side of the map, the fight is most of the time not gonna be at the same place. So you're gonna have to guess whether the fight is gonna move towards your side or towards their side. Kind of depends on who is running after who. So my guess was actually that they're gonna be running away and my team's running after them, which is why I launched it more towards the the enemy side of the map, but it turns out that they end up chasing my team, so I end up launching the ult at the wrong side of the map. But you know, hey, this is kind of one of the really hard things to do, which is to snipe with the cross map ulti, whether be it a kill or not, but it's really hard to hit the cross map ulti. So I think the easiest way to hit the cross map ulti is if someone is like 1 HP and they're running away. Generally, you can guess the route that they're running on, and you can just try to aim at where you think they're gonna be when the ult reaches them. But yeah, so anyways, here we're just going to go back, get our Triforce. Now we have our Triforce. Ezreal is a really strong 2-item power spike as long as you can get your Mana Mune evolved into the Mirror Mana, which we have not been able to do as of yet. But you know, should be pretty soon. Here I'm just launching skills into the bush to check if there's anybody there. At the same time, also charging my Mana Mune. So here, the enemy bot lane is missing, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean up this wave and start to get ready for dragon spawning. Here, control ward spotted, so I'm just going to remove that control ward. Here again, I launch a cross map ulti, trying to get the you know, help out with the fight there. And once again, I get it wrong. Ends up the enemy team is running away and my team is chasing them. Whereas this time, I thought from the previous fight that they would be chasing us, and it's just a disaster. Cross map ultis are not really working out this particular game. But honestly, I think Ezreal's ultimate is probably the least important part of his kit. Like, his Q is his bread and butter damage, his E is his mobility, and you know, his W is just sort of something you toss in, like when you're using your Q and such, like what I just did here on the dragon. So I think the ulti, you know, is probably the least important part of Ezreal. If you can hit a 5-man ulti, that could be game winning, but majority of the time your ulti is gonna hit like 2 or 3 people at most, and it's not really gonna be such a big deal. Of course, this is not an excuse to miss all your Ezreal ultis. So yeah. So anyways, here we pick up the dragon before the enemy team can respond, and here we're just trying to push down. But you can see the poke I'm getting onto the Ashe. Try to hit the ulti there. If I hit the ulti, she would have actually died here, but she saw it coming and she actually dodged into the jungle. Here I have the Mirror Mana already, so now I'm on 2-item power spike, Mirror Mana together with the Triforce, and I also am 3-0 and 3, so I'm pretty fed at the moment, especially in terms of itemization. We are of course at our strong point here. There's multiple low health bars. Leona actually goes in, but I'm getting run down by the Olaf, and there really isn't anything I can do against the Olaf. He cannot, you know, he cannot be CC, he cannot be slowed, and he basically just runs me down. Like, straight up, he just runs me down. Honestly, nothing that you can really do about it as an ADC except like to run away or something like that. Really, when an Olaf runs after you, there's very little that you can do aside from just exhausting the Olaf. And if he just runs at you, continues running at you and killing you through the exhaust, nothing much you can really do. I mean, on any ADC it's the same story. Ezreal even has a mobility spell to like blink away, but even still, I still, you know, just get run down by him. Nothing too much to discuss there. No real counterplay to Olaf, unfortunately. So that's kind of the way it is. So here we can see a huge wave like kind of accruing in bot. So I'm trying to run over there as quickly as possible so that I can try to pick up some CS. Here I'm hopping in to get the last hits. Managed to get most of the last hits here. Of course, we're losing some of them to the tower, but we managed to get majority of the wave in. Here Baron is spawning, so we ideally don't want to be on the opposite side of the map of Baron. But since I can see Twitch, Olaf, and Ashe in the top lane, I'm gonna just keep on pushing because I can see 3 of them in the top lane. The other 2 are in the mid lane, likely gonna be rotating top. Now we can see the Lux as well. Here I'm gonna try to help with the cross map ulti again. This time I believe I actually hit someone. I don't know if that actually clipped the Seraphine or who on the way there, but anyways, my team is losing the fight on the opposite side of the map here because the whole enemy team is on the top lane. I'm just gonna push and get bot lane tier 2 as well as to get this wave. Here you can see Olaf is starting to rotate together with the Lux already. So here after I get this wave, I'm just gonna run away. It turns out they weren't even coming for me, which is really weird. But anyways, here I'm just gonna hop away. And here, Kayn is pinging to actually attack. So here I'm thinking maybe we can 2v1 him. But here he just pops the Unstoppable. He's running us down. I dodged both the Ashe arrow as well as the Lux binding. I get tagged by the Lux ulti though, and you know we can't 2v1 him. So the Olaf is really strong. He's 6-2 and 4 with Triforce and Death's Dance. We can't really deal with him at the moment. So we're just gonna have to back off. At least we didn't die to him. But yeah, so here Kayn's gonna take the red buff. I'm going to get the buff share, and now we're just going to back and pick up our items. So in this particular match, I actually went for went for the Riftmaker instead of going for the Seralda's Grudge. And one of the main reasons for that is the main person I need to kite is Olaf. Olaf cannot be kited by Seralda's Grudge, so there's no real point going for Seralda's Grudge because I can't really kite the Olaf, and the armor penetration is not really useful in this game because they're all squishy except for Olaf. So I thought that the Riftmaker is probably a better buy in general because Riftmaker gives me extra damage and lifesteal, and the extra damage is going to help with killing Olaf as well as the squishy targets, and the lifesteal is going to help when I'm getting run down by Olaf. Hopefully I can, you know, use my abilities and get some healing back from the Omnivamp, from the Riftmaker, and see, you know, if that can work out. Now here you'll notice in this game I also went for QSS instead of Stasis. And the reason I've gone for that is because of how much CC there's on the enemy team. There's, of course, Lux Binding, Ash Arrow, Seraphine ulti, so a lot of things that I need to like sort of avoid. So QSS, you know, could be the way to go, or not could be, is the way to go, so that I can, you know, QSS something. Now here we get multiple enemies relatively low, but they're all going to retreat to the safety of their base. In the meantime, we're going to actually take this mid lane tower, or hopefully take this mid lane tower. Enemy team ends up kind of defending it, and we end up not being able to get this mid lane tower. Sion has to pop the gargoyles, trying his best to escape, but unfortunately does end up going down. Here, me and Leona, as well as Teemo, we're all really low, so all of us are just trying to escape with our lives at this point. And yeah, we're just going to recall and head back to base. So it's not really going you know, as ideally as it could, unfortunately, but even so, it's still not all that bad. So here, once again, I'm going to use the ult to clear out, not clear out, but thin out the wave, so that our tower doesn't take too much damage. Here I'm trying my best to save this tower. Here I'm going to hop in, clear out these minions, and here you can see that the dragon fight is coming. Now this is triple dragon for us, so this is a really important fight. I control ward over the wall to see if, you know, we can do anything about it. Unfortunately, it looks like Kayn has kind of given up on the dragon, which I think is, you know, pretty unfortunate. Here I QSS the Seraphine's ulti, and I get hit by the Ashe ulti instead. Thankfully, you know, nothing really comes of it. Here, Kayn assassinates the Ashe. Olaf is kind of getting handled by the Sion, thankfully. So here I get the kill onto Seraphine. I'm trying to DPS whoever comes close. Here I'm trying to land my skill shots on the Twitch. Unfortunately, he is getting out of range of the Q. So unfortunately, can't really do too much damage to him here. Once again, I'm just trying my best to land damage on whoever I can, but I'm getting pretty low because of the Twitch damage, as well as, you know, Olaf fighting us from the previous time. And so I'm just going to take the conservative approach and just back, complete my Riftmaker, and continue going about my day. So unfortunately, we didn't secure the triple dragon win condition, which you know, which is really a strong win condition, but unfortunately, that did not happen. We only have 2 dragons, but we did get the 2 better ones, though. Ocean Dragon is the least useful dragon of the 4 of them. And we are also on 3 items. So of course, Ezreal is a very mid-game focused champion. In late game, he kind of like will fall off a little bit compared to some other ADCs. In the early game, he's not too strong. So in the mid game is where he really shines. I finally hit a ulti on cross map onto multiple people there. But here I'm trying to rotate over to help my team, running straight down through the Baron area. And here we hop over the wall, land some Qs onto the Olaf. We're trying to kill the Olaf, but Twitch is kind of blocking. We finally get the Olaf, and now we're going onto the Twitch. Twitch has his shield bow, unfortunately, which prevents us from killing him. And here we actually end up walking straight into the Seraphine Comet. Now, why was I walking straight into Seraphine Comet? Well, basically, the only explanation I have for that is I was looking at the Seraphine and the Twitch. I wasn't actually looking at where I was going, because I know where I'm going. I know how to walk around the jungle. I don't need to look at where I'm going. I'm looking at the enemies and seeing if they're launching any spells, or if Twitch is going invis and I need to, you know, flash away, or like actually I don't even have flash. If I need to like hop away, or pop an exhaust or something like that. But unfortunately, I wasn't looking at where I was going. I run straight into the Kruk pit and get hit by the comet, which is honestly kind of embarrassing, but you know, it is what it is. And here the next fight we're gonna have is at the Elder Dragon, spawning in 20 seconds. Now fortunately, my whole team is back alive for the fight at the Elder Dragon, and of course so is the enemy team. So this is probably going to be the game deciding fight, because whoever gets the Elder Dragon can probably get the Baron and probably just end the game off of getting both Baron and Elder. So this is going to be a pretty huge fight, so we're going to try to get to the area. Picking up the red buff, of course. So here you can see the fight has already broken out. I'm going to blast plant over. Unfortunately, Dragon tanks the W. Here you can see a huge ulti across the enemy team. So if you can get this kind of ulti, it does make a difference, but if it's not this kind of ulti, it's probably not too important. Here I'm getting run down by Olaf again. I'm hopping over to the other side of the wall, and here we get the kill on Olaf, and now only Seraphine and Lux are left alive, and we end up winning the Elder Dragon fight off of a huge Q by Sion. Now, honestly, Sion was just over the wall. He channeled that huge Q into the choke point, and the enemy team all walked into it, which allowed me to combo with a, I think, 4-man ulti across all of them, and pretty much the fight was won at the beginning already. So this allows us to secure the Elder Dragon here. Of course, there's pings coming up for Baron. Going Elder to Baron is really common if you win the team fight there, because the enemy team is gonna have a hard time contesting you at the Baron since you have the Elder Dragon. Only slight drawback is you haven't spent your goal from your team fight win yet, and sometimes it is possible that the enemy team is pretty strong and you end up just dying at the Baron and losing your Elder buff, and even worse, sometimes losing the Baron. But anyways, that's not gonna happen this time. This time we're gonna secure both the Elder Dragon as well as the Baron, and now we can reset to spend our goal. So here you can see now I'm going for the Seralda's Grudge as my next item. Of course, now Olaf is getting pretty tanky. He has his Death's Dance and his Guardian Angel, so definitely getting more and more tanky. So I can also use it to kite the rest of his team. So here I can see I get it out onto 2 from downtown, mostly to clear out the wave, honestly. This particular game, I have a lot of like wave clearing ultimates, which is not common in every single game in particular. Most of the time you just use it purely for damage, but of course wave clear is also another use you can have for it. So here, unfortunately, Twitch gets caught, gets Seraphine caught as well. Seraphine dies, and pretty much, Sion gets another pick onto the edge as well, and pretty much the game is won right here. 3 people got picked, and only 2 people are left to defend the base. Only the Lux and the Olaf are left to defend the base, and honestly, there's not much that they can do. So here we can just focus the Nexus if we want to, but here I'm just trying to get more damage onto the Olaf. Olaf is unstoppable, and yeah, we just get a few extra bits of damage onto Olaf, and we do pick up the victory. So all that out the way, thank you guys for watching the video. I'm going to leave you guys with the stats as usual, and goodbye.